It's been more than a year since Hamas launched its terrorist attack on Israel, kidnapping 253 people. Almost 100 of them are still trapped in Gaza as negotiations for ceasefire and release remain at a standstill. According to Israeli authorities, more than 60 hostages are believed to still be alive and about 35 others dead. 4 Americans are among the hostages still in captivity. With a new president soon taking the highest office in the U.S., the future of hostage negotiations remain uncertain. After election night, the families of those American hostages are calling on President Biden and President-elect Trump to work together to rescue their loved ones, saying that they need a bipartisan coalition of brave, committed leaders to bring them home. One of the Americans still being held hostage by Hamas is American-Israeli citizen Sagi Dekel-Chen. We are joined now by his father, Jonathan Dekel-Chen. Jonathan also happens to be a professor at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and he joins us now from Israel. Jonathan, it is a privilege to speak with you. Can you first tell us about your son, Sagi, about the man that he is and any information you might have about him at this point?
Sure. One small correction, if I may. There are actually 7 U.S. citizens who are still hostage in Israel. 3 that we know of have been murdered, but their bodies are being kept by Hamas, and 4 that we hope are still alive. Sagi is among those 4. My son is now a 36-year-old father of 3 little girls. He and I both are dual citizens. He grew up, like the rest of my kids, on our kibbutz near Oz, which is on the border of Gaza. Very rural area. It's for those listeners who aren't familiar with what a kibbutz is. It's a cooperative farm of people who sort of live, work, and live life together. Our community was a little over 400 people on October 7th, 2023. Sagi is, I guess, is the kind of son that any father would really want. He's an incredibly creative, loving, kind of ingenious young man. He has dedicated his life to helping communities. The morning of October 7th, he was sort of on his latest pet project, which was to convert 4 old airport buses into mobile high-tech classrooms for underserved communities, for high school students in underserved communities in the south of Israel, which in general is a fairly underserved part of the country. And that was for Jewish and Bedouin students together. He is an incredible, well, you could say he's a guy by any means, but also loves his little girls. Tragically, he has yet to meet his youngest daughter. On the morning of October 7th, his wife, Avital, was 7 months pregnant when over 200 heavily armed, well-trained Hamas terrorists invaded our kibbutz, and together with several hundred looters from Gaza, most of them civilians, some of them not, rampaged through our home for the better part of 9 hours. Miraculously, Avital and the 2 girls were able to survive. She gave birth in mid-December to their 3rd daughter, but of course that was 2 months after Sagi was already taken hostage. In answer to your question, what we know, Sagi today is one of 29 hostages from our kibbutz alone, among the 101 Israeli hostages still being held by Hamas in Gaza. We know from the first hostage exchange in late November, early December, of those 100 or so hostages, women and children who were released by Hamas, about 40 of them were from our kibbutz. And some of the women and a couple of the teenagers were able to report to us that they had encountered Sagi in the tunnels under Gaza very, very briefly, just before they were released. And so we do have that confirmation, but that was an eternity ago.
Absolutely.
And that alone doesn't really give us all that much confidence, because while they were telling us that they had encountered Sagi, they had also encountered many, many other male hostages from the kibbutz, some of whom we know for absolute fact were murdered subsequently by Hamas or died from neglect by Hamas or a tragic result of friendly fire. So whatever we did know in early December is it's really not all that useful right now
I,
about his fate and the fate of all the hostages.
I can't fathom what this past year has been like for you and your family. And Jonathan, the big news in the U.S. this week is that Donald Trump will be the 47th president. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was among one of the first world leaders to congratulate Trump on his victory. I'm curious, how do you think a Trump administration will impact the Israel-Hamas war and the negotiations to release the hostages?
Well, I think the most important factor really is that President Trump will only take office on January 21st, I believe. And we have every reason to believe, the hostage families and most Israelis, that the hostages who still might be alive, and we really don't know how many might still be alive, will not survive until January 21st. So whatever, if there is a chance of getting the hostages out overall, those who might still be alive and those who have already been murdered, it has to happen before January 21st. And therefore, the 6 U.S. hostage families that represent 7 hostages, we, as you said, just issued a call really to both the incoming and the outgoing administrations to seize this moment in which both of them can fully engage in this without any American domestic politics or in sort of horse trading or credit taking coming into play, to simply get this done, to apply whatever pressure they can. And the U.S. has a lot of levers here, on not just on Israel and Hamas, but also on the intermediaries, on Qatar and Egypt and perhaps Turkey as well. Because simply, if we wait until President Trump and his administration go online, there, in all probability, will be no one to rescue alive.
And I know you've been in close communication with the Biden administration. You met with Biden last year. With my final minute with you now, Jonathan, if I may ask, how do you continue to hold on to hope? How are you maintaining strength, and any insight as to how the other families of hostages are doing?
Well, I don't think there's a universal answer to that question. I mean, I can just from within my family, there are varying degrees or varying ways that we get through a day. And I would imagine it's the same way for all of the other families of the 101 hostages. I can just say for myself that what gets me out of bed every day and drives me is the absolute obligation and commitment that I have to get Sagi home to his 4 girls, his wife and 3 young daughters. And I cannot rest until that happens, as well as all of the other hostages, getting them home to their children, their parents, their wives, their husbands. This is a crisis in Israeli society, but I believe it's also a world crisis, because if Hamas is successful in not giving back the hostages, in letting them die in their tunnels, it's a very bad sign for the world. And God help us all if that is the outcome of this horrific situation.
Jonathan, please be assured that we join our prayers with you, and we thank you for taking the time to share Sagi's story and your family's story as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.